are going to Argentina. Security forces repressed retirees protesting for an increase in pensions. The repressive actions came on the orders of Minister Patricia Bullrich. Football supporters and retirees were peacefully demonstrating in the vicinity of the National Congress to express their opposition to Javier Milei's austerity measures. 1,000 members of different federal forces fired tear gas, used physical force and water trucks to disperse the protests. During the repression, at least one person has been confirmed to be detained by security forces and several have been injured. Retirees marched once again to Congress, but this time they did not do it alone. This Wednesday, they were accompanied by supporters of football teams who decided to give them their support in view of the constant repression they suffer every Wednesday when they claim for the reinstatement of the salaries and the improvement of their living conditions. In Callao and Bartolomé Mitre, security forces repressed harshly with gas and rubber bullets elderly people, press workers, unions, and football fans. After 6 p.m. local time, the Congress Square had been practically cleared and the clashes had moved to the side streets of the downtown Buenos Aires and those who tried to reach Plaza de Mayo. With the exception of a small group that resisted in the area of the entrance to the Chamber of Deputies, while around dozens of wounded were assisted by the evacuation and first aid corps. In the middle of the debates in the Chamber of the Deputies that was taking place while this was happening outside for the treatment of the environmental, economic and housing emergency bill in Bahia Blanca, opposition legislator and leader of the banking union, Sergio Palazzo, left the chamber to support the claim of the retirees in the midst of the incidents that took place outside Congress. Likewise, the bank leader pointed at the government, whom he blamed for the incidents that took place in Congress. Demonstrations have been promoted by groups of retirees who denounce the loss of purchasing power and the reduction in the coverage of medicines. At different times, they have had the support of unions and parties opposed to Milei's government, which are in solidarity with their demands. Argentina mobilizes in defense of retirees, this time accompanied by supporters of dozens of football clubs as well as several unions in the South American country. Retirees once again marched to the Congress, but this time accompanied by the organizations that decided to give them their support in view of the constant repression they had suffered every Wednesday when they demand the reinstatement of their salaries and the improvement of their living conditions. Milei's government militarized the area around Parliament as it had threatened to repress the repression as it has happened today. Those are the images we're getting from Argentina, the strong repression that was being carried out against the people that were protesting for the betterment of their living conditions. As we know, Milei has been imposing austerity plan measures and has been promoting the reduction of budget in different government agencies, like what was recently happened and was revealed in Bahia Blanca with devastating floods that just days before they have pretty much closed down the federal department that was in charge of this situation. And pensioners and retirees have not been the exception, as they have been forced and they have seen their pensions pretty much disappear in the thin air as the inflation has hit the country and their purchasing power has been hit very harshly. And that is why this group of people, the elderly of the Argentinian society, have been marching every Wednesday down for a couple of weeks now to demand that their demands be heard and that the government take heed and hear their demands and take attention to the necessities they are facing, and that their pensions have not nearly enough to cover the basic needs. What made this Wednesday different, aside from these terrible images that we're getting live, that we're seeing on our screen, of the strong repression against all these federal forces against elderly people who were demanding their right to have a decent retirement. What made this different also was the support of what they call hinchas bravas, the supporters of the different football teams that came to join hands with the elderly of their society, as many of them said that this could be, those people protesting could be their parents and their grandparents, and they will be protesting for the right to have a decent retirement plan. These are images we're seeing the strong confrontation, as after the people were peacefully demonstrating as per order by the Minister of Defense, Patricia Bullrich, and she had threatened before that something like this would happen, then they would strongly repress. We're seeing the images how strong the repression is being with the use of water tanks and tear gas and the start of firing bullets. We have seen their images on social media that we have seen of elderly people being thrown to the ground. There's an image of a lady over 70 years old that was thrown to the ground, and she hit her head and was taken quickly to the hospital. There are also reports of people that have been detained during this demonstration. We're going to listen to the images we're getting live, the repression that the people of Argentina are suffering today as they demand the betterment of their retirement plan, the elderly, the increase of their pensions. As we reiterate the information we're getting from Argentina, security forces continue to repress the people, the retirees, protesting for an increase in pensions. The repressive actions have come on the orders of Defense Minister Patricia Bullrich. Football supporters and retirees were peacefully demonstrating in the vicinity of the National Congress to express their opposition to Javier Milei's austerity measures. 1,000 members of different federal forces fired tear gas, used physical force, and water trucks to disperse the protests. During the repression, at least one person was detained by the security forces. Retirees marched once again to Congress, but this time they did not do it alone. This Wednesday, they were accompanied by supporters of football teams who decided to give them their support in view of the constant repression they suffer every Wednesday when they claim for the reinstatement of the salaries and the improvement of their living conditions. In Callao and Bartolomé Mitre, security forces repressed with gas and bullets elderly people, press workers, unions, and football fans. After 6 p.m. local time, the Congress Square had been practically cleared, and the clashes had moved to the side streets of downtown Buenos Aires and those who tried to reach Plaza de Mayo. With the exception of a small group that continues to resist in the area of the entrance to the Chamber of Deputies, while around dozens of wounded have been assisted by the evacuation and first aid corps. In the middle of the debate that was taking place in the Chamber of Deputies for the treatment of the environmental, economic, and housing emergency bill in Bahia Blanca, opposition legislator and leader of the banking union Sergio Palazzo left the chamber to support the claim of the retirees, and in the midst of the incidents that took place outside the Congress. Likewise, the bank leader pointed at the government, who he blamed for the incidents that took place in Congress. Demonstrations have been promoted by groups of retirees who denounce the loss of purchasing power and the reduction in the coverage of medicines. At different times, they have had the support of unions and parties opposed to Milei's government, which are in solidarity with their demands. Argentina continues to mobilize every Wednesday in defense of retirees, this time accompanied by supporters of dozens of football clubs, as well as several unions in the South American country. And retirees, like every Wednesday, once again march to the Congress, accompanied by different organizations that decide to give them their support against the view of the constant repression they suffer every Wednesday when they demand the reinstatement of the salaries and the improvement of the living conditions. What we are seeing is a result of Milei's decision to militarize the area around Parliament and the following clash between the security forces and those protesting. We are getting also information that the 87-year-old woman was hospitalized after the repression by the Argentine federal police forces. This elderly woman that was protesting for her right to a dignified pension was taken to Argeric Hospital with injuries after being struck by an officer of the Argentine federal police. That's the situation that is happening right now in Argentina as we continue to see these devastating images. As we were saying, this old woman, this 87-year-old woman was wounded during the altercations and was hit by one of the Argentine federal police, and she was then taken to a hospital to receive treatment. This has been the case for several elderly people now that have been wounded during these repressions that we're seeing on our screen as they were demanding for the right to an increased pension and a dignified way of life once they reached this type of age, this moment in their life. And following these incidents, local newspapers have been reported that the woman was identified as Beatriz Blanco and is currently being treated in downtown Buenos Aires in a hospital, Argentina hospital, with injuries after being struck by an officer of the Argentine Federal Police. There are other different videos that are being shared right now on social media of the officers hitting the elderly woman, causing her to collapse to the ground. The local newspaper also reported that the crackdown continues, with the people that continue to resist on the side streets of the squares, and people continue to protest and denounce what is happening right now on the streets of Buenos Aires. This is a demonstration that has been taking place every Wednesday for a time now, as retirees are demanding for an increase in their pensions, which have been hard hit by the austerity measures that have been imposed by Milei's government that have affected all sectors of the Argentine society. And we are seeing levels of poverty in Argentina like never before. Over 50% of the Argentinian population lives in poverty and continues to decrease. First, many families have lost all their purchasing power with the inflation and the different austerity measures and the loss of employment, as the government of Milei continues to crack down on different social areas as it continues to reduce the budgets of the federal government. But what we are seeing today has been unprecedented so far. Every Wednesday, the elderly have faced a kind of repression, but the images we're seeing like today is an ongoing war against the people that came today to demand their rights to a better retirement. We're seeing the images of the police in full gear repressing elderly who were protesting. We must remember that this is a protest not by young people. There were young people supporting the elderly, but the main protagonists of this peaceful protest were the elderly, the pensioners, who were demanding an increase in the pensions because they saw their pension disappear in the thin air as the purchasing power was completely lost, and they lost all ability to be able to acquire the basic necessities as food and medicines for their daily treatments of whatever pills they needed to take. These are the images we're getting as Argentinians continue to face this militarized Congress, as per order of the defense minister, who had threatened that something like this was going to happen, that she would take action against those protesting for the increase in retirement. And we are seeing the streets completely mobilized with federal police in full gear, shields, water trucks, tear gas. All devices have been used to disperse the protests of these retirees that were demanding for the increase in their payment. The protest march had the flavor of football. We must remember in Argentina, football is extremely important, and in the figure of Maradona as well, who recently celebrated the anniversary of his passing. He was also a figure that defended their pensioners, and once in many occasions he spoke in favor of pensions being in shape for the elderly to have a dignified life at that stage of their life. We are seeing these images as today the presence of fans of football prompted also these actions, and they came to support the retirees. But the police response, led by Security Minister Patricia Bullrich, was more obvious, and experts often managed to clear the protesters from the Congress Square with tear gas and rubber bullets. All these incidents began at 4:30 p.m. local time, roughly half an hour before the march was due to begin. Over 1,000 police officers already knew what they had to do. The orders were given. There are people are also reporting that were infiltrated within the protest to disturb their peaceful protests and justify this kind of repression. Especially a group of Chacarita and Rosario Central had barely arrived when police officers began to fire the water cannons and disperse the protesters before they could even concentrate and carry out their peaceful protests like they do every Wednesday, despite every Wednesday being faced with repression. That's why today so many people were coming out in support of the elderly in the face of the repressions that they had faced in different occasions before. There are being reports of injuries and arrests. We talk about the case of the 87-year-old woman. There are other cases. There is a 66-year-old man that was also injured during the altercations. The federal police pushed him to the ground and he hit his head, and he was quickly taken to receive treatment. There, as we were saying, reports of people being being arrested during this confrontation between the security forces of the state under the orders of Patricia Bullrich, the defense minister, who the mandate was clear: repress the protest before it even took shape. And that's the images we're seeing. The result of what we're seeing is the strong repression, the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and water tanks to disperse these elderly protests as they continue to fight for their right for a more dignified retirement and an increase in their pensions so that they are able to purchase their medicines and their basic food. Last week, we are getting more information. Last week, 10 Chacarita fans joined Carlos, a 75-year-old Funedero reporter who had been attending the Senior Citizens March for several weeks, and this is how it prompted for other football fans to join. Let's continue to listen to the terrible sounds that we're getting from the streets of Buenos Aires. So we continue to see the reports of the repressions that the elderly of Argentina, those that came out in their support, are suffering today in the streets of Buenos Aires. They are being repressed with rubber bullets, tear gas, water cannons. Now we're seeing the images, the results of the clashes between the protesters and the security forces. The burning of different trash cans have been reported, as we're seeing in the images. But the repression continues by the federal forces. They continue to fire tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds that are still present in the side streets of the Square of Congress, where they were supposed to march today. But half hours before the march really began, before anything really happened, the order was cleared by Patricia Bullrich, the defense minister, and the order was to repress this protest, to make it so that it would not happen. This protest, which has earned in support with the passing Wednesday. Every Wednesday the elderly will rally in defense of their retirement plans, and every Wednesday will gain more strength. And this Wednesday was meant to be one of the biggest, with different football fans from different clubs in Argentina who would gather here with the elderly to support them in their demands for a dignified retirement. And the federal forces went out and strongly repressed the demonstration without any notice, with the use of rubber bullets, tear gas, and water cannons to make sure that this protest could not happen, that this demonstration could not happen. All this happens in the context of an Argentina that is increasingly getting poorer. The poverty rates of Argentina continue to increase as inflation continues to increase, and the answer of Milei's government is more austerity plans and more reduction, for which he has been strongly criticized by the opposition and the population in general. Recently, Milei has been seen in different controversy, more recently with the new deal that he signed with the IMF, which has been condemned by different sectors, which has in their opinion, has no analysis, has no reason for being. This another IMF deal that comes under the administration of a far-right government in Argentina, which will certainly continue to harm the social activity of the country as the government continues to cut backs in different budgets in the federal governments and continues with their plans to privatize different sectors, which will harder hit all the citizens of Argentina. These are images we're getting today. This is the news we're getting from Argentina. Strong repression with rubber bullets, tear gas, and water cannons against the elderly that were protesting for the right of a dignified pension, as they had lost all their purchasing power and their rights to and their ability to access medicine. Sad news we're getting from Argentina, the repression against the elderly's march. We're going to continue on top of what is happening on the streets of Buenos Aires, and we'll bring you all the latest news in the upcoming news brief from the south. So stay tuned with TeleSUR English.